Oh, by the way, I've got a full range of postcards on the way, Bill. Right, so
Oh,
make
thank you very
sure,
much.
Bill, the stipulation, Bill, you've either got to write to me, you've got to send me a really nice email, chuck me some money, you've got to make the most amazing compliment, and then you've got a postcard, Bill.
I can't wait. What a bargain. What a bargain.
Mind
You
you,
talk, you
I
you
upset Barbara today
you were
because
talking to me.
Barbara's got a whole collection of postcards that I send her, right?
Ah,
I don't think that I don't. Richard's met Barbara, but she got upset today because I didn't send her the Cleopatra postcard. So anyway, talking about stuff, I need to know if there's any news from anybody before we get on with the most important archaeology ever. Right. Anne's not joining us tonight because she's got a touch of the thrush. So Richard,
Nothing interesting from me.
are you enjoying my column in the Baron District now? I had another couple of people talk about stories about the Court Road Hotel. So they're going in the Baron District this week as well.
I just remember it as the court laundry.
And do you know what? You're going to love what I put in the Baron District this week. I'm not sure it's exactly appropriate, but I'll give you a clue. There used to be an Undertaker's there, and they didn't have a fire escape. We'll leave it there. Right, Goff. Anything you want to tell? Anything you want to tell us about Goff?
No, no archaeological news. No, sorry.
All right then. Bill. Um, you know that
no.
ramshackle place, Maesteg? Do you think they should drop a bomb on it?
No. Barry, you'd be a better target, I think.
Let's two of us agreeing on that point. God. Right, Bill. Anything you want to tell us?
No, I've been too busy this week practicing for the choir because I'm singing with the choir on the pitch before the game on Saturday, which is a first for me.
Hang on, in the Millennium Stadium.
Yes, I'll be there in the middle singing with the choir.
Get off!
Yeah, once you'll spot me somewhere. We've been practicing the last few weeks for it. South African songs, everything. Yeah, yeah. And also a choir next Monday in Bridgend Church as well. So I'm very musical the last few months. I'm not sure why, but I am.
Hang on, Bill. Hang on. It's not really the same, is it? 1 minute in the Millennium Stadium, then you're singing in Bridgend. It's
Yeah.
not exactly the same level, is it? Do you know what I
Well,
mean?
that demonstrates how busy I am, Carl. So no, there's no history this week, unfortunately. I'll try to find something for next week. The best I can
Okay,
do.
fair enough. Fair enough. Right, talking about fair enough, Pat.
No, I don't have any news. No, sorry.
All right, then. Okay, fair enough. And lastly, Henry, you've got to have a little bit of news just for the sake of argument.
I did send you a picture of that arch, which unfortunately showed the surface was tarmacked.
Yeah, I actually got the same image. That's the one I found.
And I think reading the backstory, the Italians did decide to actually build a road over about a third of the site anyway.
Oh, right, okay.
As you do.
We're talking about Pestum from last week. So I'm painfully aware that there might be somebody watching this for something that I really can't talk about, but I'm going to crack on, and we've got lots to look at tonight. So no interruptions from Anne. So we should be done at 9:15, amazingly enough. So let's get on with it.
I got to go by 10 past.
All right, look. Look, you and I ain't going to have words, Richards. It's not all about you, okay?
I've set the alarm already.
Look, I got to be. Look,
Richard's
Well,
alarm
get
for
on with
10
it
past.
then.
I'm trying. Did I
Probably
actually have it
finger
on
out. It was a
share
real
then? I
lady.
did, didn't I? Right, okay. I'm sure. Start now. Right, share. Right, okay. Right, okay. There. Well, hang on a minute. Where's my images gone? Hang on a minute. Let's just see where it is. No, there. Hang on. Hopefully, hang on, we're gonna there. Good. Not that bloody boring, Bill. Right, okay. I've got a bit of a pickle a minute. I'm gonna hang on. The images are like pictures there. Good. Right. Okay. There. No, hang on. What's going on? Hang on. Where's it gone? Where's everything gone? Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. We're doing all of these images. Yeah. Look at all this. Look at all this. Right. You can see that we'd be going to do a bit of Pompeii. We're going to be doing Boudica. We're going to be looking at some Napoleon's army, right? We're going to little bit more of an update on a site in Scotland, the most important Iron Age site ever, right? And I was trying to answer a few questions from last week, and we start with all of this stuff here. So we may as well start off with my goat getting lost in a bucket. And yes, animal safety, we managed to get it out of the bucket, but that's something else. Now, one of the things that I do look at, little things that come my way, right? And I thought this was absolutely great. And the reason why I thought this image was great was what the text said about this image. This is actually from a site known as a Plontis. Now, a Plontis is one of those sites that I mention when I'm discussing Pompeii and Herculaneum, right? A Plontis itself, there's a villa that's excavated and a load of other archaeology there. And the photograph is in regards to amphora, which has been stacked upside down. And I thought, wow, so this is from, the date here is AD 79. And very, very interesting. It's a piece that says these ceramic vessels used for storage and transportation of liquids such as wine, oil, and grain. Now, the one question that was asked last night, right, and they'd obviously been stacked upside down because, you know, they were going to recycle them. One of the questions that was asked last night, which I've not been asked before, and I've not really thought about it before. We know that amphora are this shape, right? Because when you stack them, you can stack them from the keel of the ship, right? And they stack really well when they're being moved around. And I thought, right, great. How do you carry these things? Well, they're going to be quite heavy, but you're going to have probably two people carrying these. You can roll them. And then the question was, how do you get the liquid out of an amphora, right? And then we thought, right, okay. So we're going to leave that as a question that you guys, as your homework, you're going to think about for next week. How do you get the liquid out of an amphora? Well, no, well, the grain you can just pour out, but liquid, if you tip it, it's going to come out too quickly. Work that one out for next week, right? And they are quite heavy. So actually later on in this presentation today, we look at this article, which I actually had lined up for last week. And because we had so much to do last week, and because we got so much to do this week, I decided to do my research on this a little bit more. And I do know more about this field than just the article itself. So deadly bacteria that doomed Napoleon's army, discovered 213 years after his retreat. So obviously Napoleon captures Moscow by October in the year 1812, and by 1813 there's very little left of his army that enters back through France, right? And this is the thing, this story about looking at what happened to Napoleon's army is something that people have only been really looking at for the past 20-25 years, and they've got more archaeological data. So we'll have a look at that a little bit later, right? So they excavating pottery, and obviously various other things that they're excavating, and we've got this wonderful aerial view of this site, and there's a mass grave. There's mass graves there. Thousands and thousands of graves have actually been found in this area. So we have a little look at this. Not yet, but we'll probably by break time we'll have a good look at this. And I actually dug out my copy of this book, which is Roman Roads in Britain, by Ivan de Margaret. Now, I do stand corrected on one point. The fact is that Ivan de Margaret is the world expert on Roman roads in Britain. And he's the guy who we mentioned. Now, he's the guy who spent years and years and years up and down all the trackways in Britain, into Scotland, into Cornwall, across Wales, looking at all the San Helens, coming across with hundreds and thousands of miles of lengths of Roman road. Now, I mentioned this guy, and we look at Wade's Causeway, which we saw the other week, and that's in this book, and we basically said it's probably not really a stretch of Roman road. And we look at Backstone Heath that we mentioned last week, which is probably definitely not a Roman road. That's in here, right? So how many roads in Britain are actually Roman, right? And I actually thought, right, I've got to actually really give you the definition of what I believe a Roman road is in Britain. Right. And it's pointing at you directly in front of this image. Now, mistake I made was that I mentioned that Margaret was studying Roman roads in Britain in the 60s and 70s. No, he had published his work in 1955, and there's edition after edition of this book of Roman roads in Britain. I've actually got 2 copies in the studio in Barry, and actually these are actually quite expensive books. I've got one here, and I thought, right. And this book here, Richard's going to tell on me. This was borrowed from Barry Boy's Comprehensive School, Richard. My copy. I didn't take it back to the library. I'm sorry to say. But the fact of the matter is, the definition of a Roman road in Britain is this thing that they're linear lines, right? But when we talk about linear lines, as you know, if you listen to my stuff about Tim Ingold, I've mentioned him a few times, Bruegel's Harvester and everything intermingles in the archaeological record, and so on, layer upon layer and layer. A linear line to Tim Ingold and me is not necessarily something that's straight. It's something that's continuous. It's something that keeps going, whether it goes around mountains or whether it goes up and down, whether it goes this way and that way. That's what a Roman road is. It's something that's continuous, right? Is sinuous. So that's a nice word. So that is a good example of what a Roman road is, right? This is a Roman road that is the military way, Staingate, if you want to call it, the military way. And what you've got this crag along here, which defines part of Hadrian's Wall. And the road itself to the rear of Hadrian's Wall is a continuous linear way, but that's basically more or less the definition of what a Roman road is. Now, I get really peeved when I'm in a car and Michelle turns around and says, oh, there is a Roman road up there because it's straight. I'm thinking, right, Roman roads are not really straight. They're linear, they're sinuous, they flow across the landscape. And the other thing as well is lots of these lengthways are based on earlier trackways, earlier things that existed. So when you get images like this in a book of just basically nothing, right, and basically a pathway like that, right, that could basically be anything. It's not straight, it's a twisty, but it's likely that that's classed as a routeway, rather than technically a road surface that existed in the Roman era, but was not necessarily created in the Roman era. So all these sort of disparities in what I'm saying carries what a Roman road is. But this is another point when you're looking at this book. I've been to this site. This is the Wigton Roman fort, the old Carlisle Roman fort, and Wigton itself is also the home of the BNP. That's another really interesting fact. But the fact of the matter is, what you've got there, if we draw in here, you can see there's a line there, and it goes through all the way through the fort. But does it come out the other gateway? There's obviously a linear road there. Now, this is a really interesting point. I got a few points to make about this image. I've been to this site once. Actually, I may have been there twice, but anyway. So I've been to this site, and you can't actually get onto the fort because the farmer, is a scheduled ancient monument, but you can't actually get onto the fort. but one point is that if we looked at the Brecon Igaea fort at Brecon, it's got 4 gateways like this, but one of the gateways just goes over a precipice. So if I don't know if any of you, Bill, you went with me to the Igaea site, didn't you? And I basically pointed out a gateway that basically led nowhere. But all Roman forts had 4 gateways, even if they built 4 gateways, even if all the gateways didn't operate, because that's how they built a plan of a Roman fort. Now, the other thing is that needs to go out the window. A Roman fort is not necessarily playing card shape. It can be square, right? As we see with examples along Hadrian's Wall. And as we can see with the Roman fort that Bill's also been with me to, the one at Holyhead, that's square, not playing card shape. I want to tell you one other little fact, right? And basically, right, Pat remembers my little son, Reuben, right? So I went out with his mum this day to look at this fort. And there she was with Reuben in the pushchair, right? And I was looking at the fort from around here. And then she shouted, she said, "Oh, look what I found." And I thought, what? She said, "I found an inscribed I found a stone with inscription on it." And I thought, no. "Yeah, I found an inscription on this stone." And I thought, "No, you haven't." And I went over there, lo and behold, there was an inscription on the stone. She'd actually found it on the wall. And it was the first inscription to be found at Old Carlisle in 100 years. And that was absolutely amazing, right? So I thought I'd give you that little fact. Now, this, do you know when things stay in your mind? I remember seeing this image. Oh, hang on a minute. What's happened now? Go away. Hang on. Right. That there, I want to see that. Right. Like the site I saw, like the site I showed the other week in Hereford, not in Hereford, Gloucester way, where you had that big stone sort of abutment on the side of the river. I want to go and see that, where Bill's seen it, right? But this itself is known as Pedlar's Way. Now, this is a stretch of, I believe, the best preserved piece of Roman road in Britain. I've never seen it. I've seen this image before. And what you've got this here along here, which is a rutway that's been offered into the trackway due to the fact of overuse. But this is more like what a Roman road in Britain would look like. A Roman road in Britain would look like something like this. Cobbles, nothing regular, nothing really defined. You've got a curb on either side, quite narrow, and that really fits the bill. And when we come up with an image not too far off in this presentation tonight, and we look at an image from Pompeii, right, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Lots of Roman roads were quite narrow and not the perceived ones that we've mentioned over previous weeks that have turned out not to be Roman roads. I really want to see this, but this is in Norfolk. I don't think Michelle would be too impressed that we drive all the way up here to see this road, but maybe in the future. Now, I have actually been really bounding through my stuff this week, and I've been sort of I destroyed a whole pallet of paperwork this week about a massive bonfire of stuff that I no longer needed. I'm finding stuff that I haven't seen for decades, and some of that stuff that I haven't seen for decades we're looking at this week, and this is one of those pieces of thing that I haven't actually looked at for decades. This is a wonderful publication written by one of the Wheelers. This is actually written by Sir Mortimer Wheeler's wife, Tessa Wheeler, right? And Mrs. R.E.M. Wheeler. Interesting. It should say Tessa Wheeler. I don't know why it says Mrs. R.E.M. Wheeler, but her husband's initials are used when in fact this is written by his Mrs. Interesting, that point. Now, I've been to Verulamium, and look at that. The date is 1930. This is nearly a 100-year-old document. And it's really well written, actually. It's really, really well written. And this is one thing I'm going to say, right? I had somebody send me a document recently, and it was one of the most boring documents I've read, and you've got to go read page after page to try and find what you wanted. With these earlier reports, you get to the point straight away, and Richard knows that. He's read loads of these things as well. Now, I just thought I like picking into these little bits and pieces, looking at Roman archaeology and history, and all the other bits and pieces that we do. Now, this is a reference, the preliminary excavations of Verulamium, and the book itself is not actually big at all. It's only like I think 20 pages long. That's it. It's great, lovely little publication. It's something you can pick up, read, and you've got the information. One thing that was said about Verulamium, which is St. Albans, north of London, sort of northwestly of London, actually, it basically mentions in the 1600s, a writer once described Verulamium as a forgotten city, sometimes near St. Albans. So, in other words, Verulamium is St. Albans. Now, like many sites, I like to say this. I've been saying this. I said this a lot yesterday. If you're planning an expedition to any Roman landscape, i.e. Londinium, where there's over 20 archaeological sites in the centre of London alone to see, you've got to plan it, and you've got to make a day of it, right? When you go to something like Verulamium, right, you need a little plan there. There's a bit of a gateway there. There's 2 long sections of wall. It's great. Bit more wall. There's the theatre there. There's the museum, a bit of mosaic. There's all little bits and pieces there worth a visit, right, if you're ever going that way. And obviously, lots of this stuff is being delivered to us by the likes of those archaeologists from the 1920s and 1930s, particularly Sir Mortimer Wheeler and his missus, Tessa Wheeler. Actually, the interesting link between the Wheelers and this site and lots of other Roman sites in Britain is that they did excavate, or they were responsible for work at Aegea, and Geltligaia, and the likes of Caerleon. The excavation at Caerleon. So, these people were out and about. So that's a bit of a link. So again, thinking about bits of beautiful archaeology, I can say something else about this sort of this scallop shell sort of mosaic. I can say the one thing that this scallop shell mosaic is perfect. It's perfect, and the scallop wave design there is something very, very Roman. You usually see this associated with fountains, carved into fountains. I've seen several, and it's a Roman symbol. It's a symbol of the Roman world. So, and I just got enticed into these pages by this one image, and I got enticed. I thought, hang on a minute. Sometimes when you look at something like this, and actually, maybe I should get it the right way around, shouldn't I, folks? So let's just get the right way around so you can make a little bit more sense. Let's take it that way. Love it. Now, I was looking at that and I thought, wow, that's amazing. This is Verulamium. This is a cellar of a Roman shop. This is the archaeology is 6 foot high, so you could just wander in there and you can have a look at it. It's all backfilled now, unfortunately. And I just thought, wow, this is the description here is really, really interesting. It says, and there's actually only a really short description about this. And one thing that my eye, I don't know if your eye is actually looking at, your eye is actually guided to, for example, that there. I really want to know what that is, but it doesn't actually tell you in this publication. So we're talking about an adjacent building with a street frontage was probably a shop, a building with a veranda facing the street and consisting of 3 small rooms behind which lay a deep cellar, as you can tell. And we've got another image of that. Look at that image there. Does that itself blows your mind? It really, really does, because it's the height of archaeology. It makes it really alive. Now, So this cellar, after serving its purpose for some 2 centuries, let's spell it out, 200 years of people using this. Not to sound patronizing, but 200 years is a number of generations using this cellar. So this means that this has been in operation for 200 of the years that the Romans have actually been hodling around Britain. And so when you think about it, it survived the 100s, it survived the 200s. It was there. after the disastrous revolt of Boudica. Yeah, so it was created after that. Now, if it was created before, it'd been backfilled with all bits and pieces and nobody would have used it again. And because it was backfilled and disused after AD 300, right, that means its preservation is as fine as it is, as fine as you're looking at it now. Now, we do still find these types of things in Britain, but the problem is we don't make enough of them because I think archaeology is too rushed these days. It's not given the time and echelons that it should actually be given. It retains the cement and whitewashed walls appropriate to its kind, and along three sides of the traces and the timber shelving with which it was equipped. That's what those three holes are. It's shelving, not beams. Its two entrances were formally fitted, so you got one entrance there, and you got another entrance, which you can actually see on the top hand of the screen. And these were fitted with timber framed doors. And there are indications also of a massive timber structure, which may have been in the nature of a crane for lifting heavy objects to the surface from the cellar. So that's really interesting. Was it lifting amphora? So that's one sort of thing, because we know that cranes were on dock sides in regards to lifting amphora and heavier things and so on. For example, in Londinium, we found evidence of that. Maybe that was to lift things out of the cellar, in this case, in the 1930s. But again, this may have been an excavation in the 1930s, but it's as relevant as the day it was excavated in the 1930s as it is today, because it's still archaeology. If it's found today, we'd be talking about in the same way. Same period. So, but the most noteworthy feature of the structure, there it is. Look at that there. Look at that window. A blocked up window. Now this blocked up window, this was sealed up back in the past, you know, whitewashed. You know, it's got the sort of door it's got the jambs either side, and in view of the rarity of Roman windows, this is of considerable archaeological and architectural interest. So I thought I'd show you that. I thought I was absolutely fascinated by that thing as well. Now, what we've got tonight, I've decided that the Boudican revolt, after what everybody said last week, and what we've been doing and doing lots of little bits of archaeology, and you're right, Bill. I'm glad you admitted that after 2 hours of the same lecture you fall asleep. So but if you've got little bits, you keep awake. I do like honesty. Now, this is a rather interesting book, and not a lot has changed since this publication was actually put together by a chap by the name of Paul Seeley. And he was originally writing this work, in 1987. And obviously the edition that I've got here is from 2010, right? So the point is with all of this is that when we look at the Boudican revolt, I like to do it, and I will do it this week and I'll do it next week. I like to do the Boudican revolt in the sense of the archaeology, right? Rather than what the historians are saying. So that's really, really important that I actually do it that way. So this actually links me to my, also, I found one of my old history books, right, from Barry Boys. And this will take Richard down memory lane. But this is one thing that we discussed when we were in Barry Boys, this head of Claudius, found in the River Ald. Now, the River Ald is between the likes of Colchester, Camel and Dunham, and the likes of Londinium, London. Now, this is a piece of really nice archaeological evidence. Now, this is associated with the Temple of Claudius, which, by the way, was burnt down by the people that were involved in the Boudican revolt. Now, this is one point. This is a piece of archaeology. It's been torn off a statue. It was probably placed on some kind of stake, and they wandered along, and they were going across a river, and they accidentally lost it in the river. So this is one of those points. This is the whole thing about this, that what we've got to do is we've got to look at the archaeological evidence, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight, and what we're going to be doing next week. So reminded that this was a specific point that my history teacher, Malcolm Phillips, mentioned when we were looking at Roman archaeology, which is the same book that I've actually got down there, which is funny that we're doing this at this minute. So there we go. Caister St. Edmunds, which was basically a Roman site, which I've been with Bill. Me and Bill have been to Caister St. Edmunds. It's a site with massive banks and ditches, with a nice bit of stonework. It's a site that was eventually made into a Roman city, right? But it's in the location of a site that's associated with the Iceni. So Caister St. Edmunds was probably a location which would have been surrounded, would have been a city that would have been burnt down to the ground. And then the Iceni and the Trinovantes and anyone else who wants to join them head towards Colchester, London, Verulamium. The way I like to do, we're doing archaeology. We do a lot of history, naturally. We're doing archaeology. And the point is when we're thinking about archaeology, we're looking for archaeological evidence. So, guys, just paint your mind to a point in time, and the point in time really is that if you think about all the history associated with the Boudiccan rebellion was destroyed, right? It's destroyed now. It's gone, right? How do we know the Boudiccan rebellion happened? Well, somewhere around AD 60, we've got that metal bust that's been torn off a statue in a river. That's not enough archaeological evidence to tell us there's a rebellion. We know that the archaeological evidence tells us that the temple that was associated with Claudius, because Claudius was made a god, right? That was destroyed and burnt down. Why was it destroyed and burned down? Another piece of archaeological evidence, right? We've also got loads of more archaeological evidence in Colchester. We've got the thick black layer in London, right, which is sometimes a meter thick of burnt material, right, including buried bags of dates, buried bags of sort of wheat and all sorts of things. People who've been decapitated, the heads that you see in this big thick black layer in Londinium, Colchester, and Verulamium, right? So we find all this evidence. What's this about? So if we just discarded the historical evidence, the archaeological evidence tells us that something major is happening in around AD 60. And I would like to make this point as well. There's little to no evidence to say that Julius Caesar invaded Britain, right? Other than Julius Caesar's own writings. Julius Caesar wrote the history, and then other historians wrote what Julius Caesar wrote. So in other words, if we had nothing left from Julius Caesar, we'd have no idea that Julius Caesar had an invasion or a planned invasion in 56, and then a real invasion in 55 and 54 BC. But this rebellion is more real than anything Julius Caesar did. Right, it was actually more tangible, more credible, more information, more archaeology, and things being found even today. It's likely that no more documents will be found associated with this Boudiccan rebellion, right? But we can find more archaeological evidence, so that's the difference. So the archaeological evidence could still be found. We might actually find, Carl, you're wrong. They've suddenly found a document in Julius Caesar's library, not Julius Caesar's library, Julius Caesar's father-in-law's library in Pompeii, to actually say that in fact the Boudiccan rebellion actually occurred, right? But we haven't actually found that document yet. But we can still find evidence like this. So this is basically a bag of grains that were actually found in a burnt layer at Colchester. I kid you not. It's there, right? So again, archaeological evidence around AD 60, and this is datable archaeological evidence, right? Now, the other thing as well is with historical documents, you can't really be sure of the dates with historical documents. So, this burnt grain, this massive burnt grain is a vital piece of archaeological evidence. Burnt grain itself is really valuable. It's valuable to us today if we're in our houses today and we've got nothing to eat. We've got grains. That's something to eat, isn't it? So back then, even as valuable back then, even if more, right? Why would that be burnt? Why is the area that the grains were actually burnt left, right? Simply because there was a dramatic event, right? Buildings collapsed, covered the grain, and with it, thousands and thousands of people that were slaughtered in the streets of Colchester. Oh God, but we'll come back to Boudica later on in the presentation today. This is why Richard, when he leaves at 9:10, he might miss a little nugget, except probably not. So, or yes, I mentioned this last week. I showed you on the screen this image, right? And years ago in 1990, I would say, I wrote to the Pompeii. I wrote to Pompeii, and they sent me a couple of things back, right? And we discussed this image. I tell you what, right? This is the point, and this is something that I meant. I phoned up a couple of you today, Goff, about something completely different. But I actually phoned Henry, and I said, Henry, can you find some images of the Roman road at Paestum? And he looked on the internet like I did. We couldn't find it. Now, it's likely that when we get, maybe he's got an image of a Roman road with ruts at Paestum in his garage. Good old Henry, right? But there's nothing of that image on the internet, right? You don't get images like this on the internet because this is a hard copy, a hard piece of information that I've got in front of me tonight. So don't always rely upon the stuff on the internet because that's not all that we've got. Sorry, that's something else. Oh, and by the way, that's to do with my article in the Barron District News coming out tomorrow. But I'm going to tell you no more because you won't buy the newspaper. Now, again, this is thanks to Henry. I got this image, right? Henry didn't send me this image, but when we think about that, somewhere in amongst all that there is this, right? And I don't know if you saw that, Henry, but this is down one of the back streets in Pompeii. And that there is a very narrow street, single carriage. Did you see that?
Yeah. Looks very
Why
familiar.
didn't you send me a photo?
You didn't ask for that one.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Hey, Henry, as you saw that in the flesh, what are we thinking? What's in your mind?
Well, I'm thinking a crossing point. Obviously, therefore, that roadway was filled with probably a lot of nasty stuff. So you didn't want to get your toga dragged in it. You've got tracks, well-worn tracks, which have been worn away over a very lengthy period of time.
Can I say something?
Yeah, you're allowed to interrupt, Henry. You're not Anne. Go for it.
I've seen similar wheel ruts on some of the roads in Pompeii. Could they be drainage channels and not wheel ruts?
No, there tended to be drainage under the on either side. There's they would have drainage holes actually cut just below the large curbstones.
Yeah, he's correct.
Mm.
He's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Bill brings useful cynicism sometimes, but we've obviously got an answer to that. But that's a good point. However, those ruts themselves are worn down from really heavy iron treads on the wooden wheels, and it's basically I'm looking at that and I'm thinking that is a nice bit of wear. Now, the other thing that really sticks to me is that the way these stones are actually set, right? And when you think about it, the moment that this site itself was lost forever in AD 79, that's where the surface is actually preserved, and they don't look like they're perfectly hewn stonework, right? It looks quite crazy paving, right? And it looks very much unlike what we were taught that Roman roads look like. But I just wanted to bring you that because I was looking for this image of this road that Henry mentioned to the coast from the gate at Paestum, which is the same image that he sent me earlier on, which I looked at. And the Italians look like they've tarmacked over a section of Roman road, naturally preserving it. But this is why I got to this one at Pompeii. But when again, when I was thinking of the likes of Pompeii, and I thought, not Pompeii, when I was thinking of the likes of Paestum, right, I just thought that when we think about Pompeii, we think about Paestum, which is a lot more open, is it Paestum's about 250 hectares, is a massive site, right? Huge, with the three big temples that we saw last week. But this is a larger site, and the difference is with the likes of Pompeii, it's really narrow streets and so on. But Paestum's a lot more open, so the roadways are a lot more open as well. But that again looks like a lot of crazy paving, not sort of tight knit sort of stones. But again, there's probably where if you see that at Paestum, but this is not the image that our friend was trying to show us. But that you can actually just see this is another trackway at Paestum. You can actually see occasional ruts along there, right? And if Henry jumps out and says, "Oh, that's the stretch," but no, this is in Paestum itself. So you can see lines there, lines there, lines there, various different ruts. So when we think about this, we think about being able to. Usually, we're told this is what the notes tell us, and we'll go on to some of those notes in a short while. Usually, we're told, for example, that Roman roads themselves are sort of in a way dual carriage, where you can actually have two sets of traffic passing, one going one way, one going the other, right? However, this one itself is single carriage. Oh, yes. So again, what we are going to do in the future is look a lot more at these Roman roads, the sort of archetypal things of the Roman road. This is a Roman road actually in France. Now, this is a lot more consistent than some of the surfaces that we've seen. A lot more consistent, right? But one of the things that you do see is that something, for example, that there, right, which is one stone that is clearly being worn away, and I think this is absolutely fascinating. But this actually looks quite wide for any wagon, any cart. This is obviously over 1.5 meters wide, and be good to look at this again. But when we're thinking, for example, of the stretch in Norfolk, and I said it's that bit in Norfolk, the Peddler's Way, that I would really like to see. The one thing that you've clearly got is, for example, the curbstones, and that really sets it out to be a Roman road itself. But again, when you've I've looked at them recently, and I didn't copy an image on for you guys to look. But one thing that when they're discussing Roman roads, they're talking about like a meter of layers, and you're thinking about, oh yeah, what we'll do, we'll put a bit of gravel down here, then we'll do this, and we'll get the bigger stones at the top. And I'm thinking, well, it's probably not that way when you cross section this bit. But this is a bit of Roman road in the likes of France. And again, this has taken us to another journey. This is actually, I do believe this is a stretch in Syria. And again, what you've got there is wear over a very, very long period of time. But again, it's crazy paving again. So I'm thinking that the models that we used to think of with the Romans, not all is as straightforward, right? And even though we should have lots of respect for the Roman military and how they're creating their empire, maybe everything is not copybook, right? Because none of these roads are copybook. And if we're being told that the Roman military built all these roads, I don't think that's correct either, because lots of roads look like they've been built over a long time by different people over many, many centuries, and not just by the Roman military. Now, again, when I'm going down this Roman road avenue, I saw this and I thought, oh, wow, doesn't this look absolutely brilliant? I've no idea where this is. And that is the problem. I emphasize several things by looking at this image. The first thing, that wherever this is, the people who excavated this saw the importance of the archaeology and put it under a building like this so that you can see it in its entirety. Great. But there's and you can see that it's more regular, right? The way that this road is created, it's a lot more regular, right? So that's a point that I've been trying to make. You can see the camber in the middle, it's a lot more curved. It's like a road that should be typically the type of thing that we would talk about in regards to the Roman road textbook form. But the danger of looking at things on the internet is they're not labeled properly. That is the problem. So I would love to know where this was. And Henry, if you go out and you dart and you work out where this site is, we'll come back to it and we'll have a little look again. But there's another point to be made, 2 points. Wherever this is, okay, this is a location where this was abandoned quite rapidly, right? And you can see the bodies there, and you're going to jump out and say this is Herculaneum and Pompeii, but I don't think it is. You could see a body there in the gutter, and you can see another body there. Right, Bill, you jump in. What were you going to say?
Go back to that image.
Yeah, go for it. There.
A body. So what's that inside? It looks like a cogged wheel inside, doesn't it? That doesn't look like a body to me.
That is a body.
Oh, I see. So that's the spine, is it?
Yeah, that's a spine.
It must be. Right, okay. Yeah. It looked like a cogged wheel to me. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see it now, the skull. Yeah, I got it. I got it.
You should know your spines. We were looking at a baby's spine at Sandy sticking out the cliff.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, carry on.
But the point is, this must have been abandoned just like that, right? Because you got two bodies along the gutter, right? So whatever happened, this was abandoned just like that and then this must have all been covered over, because if that wasn't the case, in a storm, these bodies would have just been washed away. They would have been disarticulated, but they're articulated. Something somewhere covered this up quite rapidly. Now, the other point, again, I'd love to know where this is. I'm really frustrated about the bad labeling of stuff on the internet. This is why I use books. My books themselves in these presentations really take over more than anything, because I can rely upon the books. They're labeled. I know precisely what I'm saying. Right. One point I'd like to say before we get off this image is that when I discuss Cirencester Corinium, again, Gloucester Way, there's archaeological evidence in Cirencester to say that bodies were left in the gutters, right, in the latter part of the 400s. That means that Cirencester was just abandoned and was deserted. So there was nobody left to bury the bodies. And there's also evidence in Cirencester Corinium as well, where there's a body that's actually found in a hypercore system. And obviously that means that if a body was actually found in a hypercore system, the hypercourse was out of use before the person crambered in there. It's likely a plague hit Cirencester Corinium sometime maybe in the about 450s, 460s, a plague that we really don't know about. Right, okay, so mentioned Pestum there, Pestum. And we've already done the Pestum bit, but I love doing that last week, the Temple of Hera. And again, remember that we've got the level of broadcasting, how when civilizations like the Romans go to these places, that they preserve and allow the former cultures like the Greeks at Pestum to remain around them. Now, it was mentioned last week, Goff and Henry's find that the most important archaeological site ever to be excavated on the planet of the Earth ever is this site in Uzbekistan, which is Tugun Balak. Now, this site of Tugun Balak is very, very interesting because it sort of allows us to understand the Silk Route with the answer that somebody questioned a few weeks back. So when we looked at the Silk Route, one of you basically said, what about, hang on a minute, if silks are going one way, what's going the other way to trade for the silks? This is the answer. This is a vast iron processing site, not an Iron Age site, folks, right? But this is a large iron making city, right, from the 500s to the 1000s. And again, we do know that this existed probably in the Iron Age, yes, as far back as around 100 years BC, and it became a massive sort of metropolis of iron making. And we actually can link this in with Southeast Wales, because a guy that I know fairly well and oh God, Bill's actually met him. Stuart Wilson at the Trellick site. Well, the Trellick site was very similar to this. You know, Stuart said that where is the iron-making metropolis of the medieval period in Wales? Where is it? And he actually found it at Trellick. He excavated it. The archaeological remains are there. And this is one such site. But this site itself is from the 500s to the 1000s. Mainly, this is and this site was suddenly abandoned, right? It's 700 feet up, right? It's along the Silk Route, right? Trellick was suddenly abandoned at some stage. It's probably because people's movement and understanding of metal processing has altered over time. And this is what happens. Things change. Industries move and industries are taken over by other industries. I know we're always using iron. It's a bit like Silicon Valley. One day Silicon Valley will not be there because it will we're not as much reliant upon those types of levels of silicon microchips as we used to be, right? However, whereas we might not always use those level of microchips, we'll always be thinking about using iron, right? So, but obviously the focus on using iron had obviously changed to other localities, probably more towards the east and more towards the west along the Silk Route. So again, there it is. We're looking at these. They've got two sites there, Tugun Balak and Tash Bulak, in southern Uzbekistan along the length of the Silk Route. And again, 700 feet up, and they're excavating this site. Now, this is a site which was lost in history. But they've got archaeologists actually working there, labouring with their brushes in an area where it's an area of a modest size type modern home where they're finding various metalworking. That we know that they've got metal smithing going on there. They're bringing iron to the site. This site would have had formidable towers with a wall around it, enclosing an area of 300 acres. And where we think about this is what one of the notes basically says. So they're looking at sort of they say here the artifacts that they got and the iron pellets. We're talking about miners being there, smelters being there, blacksmithies being there from the 500s onwards, producing weapons and tools. And then we go to the bit of the story that's they likely forged swords, arrow tips. They forged horse tackle, you know, all the tack for horses and so on, essential to the people that were needing that metalworking along the step of that landscape along the Silk Route. And you were looking at people like the Huns and the Mongols. And then a bit further over towards the west, you're talking about the Scythians. And again, this technology is a place where this technology is evolving. But again, when you've got these technical localities like this all sort of moves to different areas where new iron resources are more plentiful. Obviously, iron is being brought to this site to be worked, but obviously, if you take the manufacturing closer to those sites of iron ore, then things are going to be a bit more productive. But this was a metropolis for quite some time, and the Arab sources mention this. The site had never been located, but it's been located now. So that's, I think, there's a wonderful piece of archaeology, and archaeology going back quite some time. So it was a nice little bit of an article that came out last week. Deep breath. Right. So what we've got is we've got this again. We mentioned this last week. We did mention this last week. And one of the things that we mentioned last week in regards to this find was that there was more archaeology to sort of discuss from this site. So I briefly sort of thought, well, with this site of Bremium, which is a site known as High Rochester, which is north of Hadrian's Wall. This site itself is a site that they found new intaglios. They found amphora, which has come specifically from Spain, right? So again, that sort of amphora question. And what we've got a lime kiln that they've excavated at the site, which is quite an interesting, quite a really nice piece of archaeology. And there's the banking itself of the fort. And I mentioned this when I was looking at my journey around Britain, when I was looking at Roman sites around Britain, High Rochester, stone standing remains, and look at that gateway. Doesn't that look absolutely fine? And obviously the wall behind is a sort of modern edifice, but that stonework there, that's proper, really nice, meaty Roman stonework. And we know the site at High Rochester is really sort of kicking off before the construction of Hadrian's Wall. It's north of Hadrian's Wall. And so High Rochester itself, Bremennium, and we got this fine gateway, and the site itself remained in use into the 300s, right? AD 300s, which only says one thing, that when archaeologists are talking about the idea of Roman Britain moved south of Hadrian's Wall at a certain point, it doesn't. It remains still north of Hadrian's Wall. And when people talk about Hadrian's Wall being a border between those in the north and the south, when this site is actually north of Hadrian's Wall, is absolute codswallop. So again, really nice piece of archaeology, which again, you've got the springles from where the archway would have been. Oh, not that. You've got the springles where the archway would have been. And basically, not a really good arch, that. But the fact of the matter is, again, really nice piece of archaeology. And these places need a little bit more mentioning, which we do from time to time. Now, again, I said I'd get to this probably by the break, and we're not in break time yet, but we will be after this piece. Now, I like this. I know this is not Roman archaeology, but who cares? I really like this area of archaeology. So again, the DNA of Vilnius is a nice piece of archaeology. And when you talk about Napoleon's army, I've done research into this, but this was back in the 2000s when they were actually start coming across this archaeology. But the problem is when you start looking into this archaeology, you come across other stuff, which is from the Second World War, and it's so easy to get the wrong interpretation of the archaeology. So you've got to get the DNA, you've got to do the radiocarbon dating, and then you get back to this stuff of Vilnius. Now, one thing about Vilnius, if we show you on the map, we'll come back to these images. There we go. There's Vilnius. And what we think about this site is that there's several things about this Napoleonic stuff which I've studied over the years. And the one thing is that we can't we must be very careful when we look at the archaeology, because when we look at some places like Vilnius, how many of the people already died at Vilnius before they actually even headed towards Moscow? Right, that is a really, really good point. On the retreat from Moscow, Napoleon's army was really, really ill. Right, Napoleon went ahead of his army, ended up in Paris, and followed behind by around 50,000 soldiers that had survived the invasion of Russia. Now, one of the big things I think when people talk about Napoleon's invasion of Russia, when he captures Moscow in, say, October 1812, of the Grand Army of about 400,000 troops, there's probably about 300,000 left by the time he gets to Moscow. You've got the Battle of Borodino, for example, which was one of the biggest battles to take place in Europe at that stage. Thousands and thousands of Frenchmen died, as well as Russians. And wait for it, 50 generals of Napoleon's army died at Borodino. That's a really weird fact to chuck at you. Now, and I think maybe one of Napoleon's marshals actually died on the retreat as well. So when we talk about the disaster that was Napoleon's campaign, it's not just about the retreat, it's about invading Russia. That's the point I want to make. It's also about Vilnius, is about places like that where bodies are now being uncovered. So the figures say that around 300,000 soldiers were lost of Napoleon's Grand Army from 1812 into 1813. But how many of them died of disease is a really contentious issue, and it is a contentious issue with me personally, because I've looked at this. Now, when we think about this, the teeth contain bacteria that causes paratyphoid fever and louse-borne relapsing fever. So paratyphoid fever comes from liquid, comes from human contact, right? Louse-borne relapsing fever is also something that is from louse. So all of this archaeology are looking at this, and they've excavated in around one pit 5,000 individuals at Vilnius alone. Now the big question is, are they all of Napoleon's army? That is the question. Are all these people there part of Napoleon's army? Could some of them have been from the Russian army, for example? Could some of them have died a few months earlier on the advance to Moscow? Did they all die on the retreat from Moscow? These questions are really, really powerful questions, because we really don't know the full story about Napoleon's Grand Army. We really don't know what happened. There's terrible stories that we hear about Napoleon's Grand Army, and stories like the stragglers at the back of the lines were killed, were made slaves by the Russians, and all these different things. We don't know how many of these stories are true, but one of the diasporas of this story, which is quite a powerful word, which is a really important word, diaspora, retreat, movement people, is that when we think about these bodies, it's said that it was so cold in Vilnius in 1812 going into 1813. Eventually the army, whatever was left, was probably leaving the Baltic states by then, by the early part of 1813. And there's stories like in the churches and the cathedral at Vilnius, to keep themselves warm, they got the bodies from outside, which were frozen in the ice and snow, to block up the windows, to keep the infirmary, to keep the cathedral, to keep the troops warm, right? And people would have cuddled up to the dead to keep themselves warm. Those types of stories. Hence, any louse would come off the dead body naturally and get into the clothing of the warm soldier and bite them, and more infection would be abound. And one of the things that we do know as well, when we again, let's look have a little look at this tooth. So the study let us put names to infections that basically history can't tell us. So many soldiers arrived exhausted, starving, and ill, and a substantial number died there. So when we think about looking at the teeth, so this is the thing: we've got 5,000 bodies, but this archaeology is just so expensive to do that they've only managed to get really good tests off 13 of the soldiers. So four of the 13 soldiers tested positive for paratyphoid fever, analyzing the bacterium associated with the teeth. And basically the others look like they died from louse-borne pathogens as well. So both bacteria infections cause fever, headache, and weakness, and terrible diarrhea, and can spread quickly in crowded, unsanitary conditions. And when I saw the word unsanitary conditions, I actually disagreed with that word, because I actually started thinking, well, in these cold conditions, you're going to be urinating and you're going to have diarrhea, which is going to freeze straight away, right? So which is going to be no cause of unsanitary conditions for others, because it's frozen, it's out the way, you know, anything's been destroyed. But anyway, back to this sort of typhoid fever and the spread and all the rest of it. And one of the things that they don't make much of in this article are the artifacts. Right, that was a cap badge from the 17th Infantry Regiment, one of Napoleon's infantry regiments, and it's obviously likely that these people were when they died and they were frozen stiff outside. Right, they were just chucked in a pit, clothes and all, because you couldn't get the clothes off them. Right, you might be able to cut their fingers off to get the rings off them, but I'm not going to go any further on that one. But however, this finding bits of archaeology within this, and the other thing as well is, even though this stuff has been frozen in the ground, the level of preservation of artifacts associated with these bodies is excruciatingly poor, right? Simply because of the process that these have been in the ground. So obviously they're buried in the ground. Because of the ground conditions in places like Vilnius and the Baltic states, temperature can go up and down, up and down. So bacteria and stuff can sort of thrive in the summer months in the ground, eat everything away, and then the cold conditions come in and the process continues. So I thought that was an absolutely brilliant piece, a really, really, really nice piece. And we're looking at, look at that there. The bodies are being chucked in the ground. They're articulated. So if you can see the one point when you look at an image like that, they're articulated. So it's likely that they were stiffs. When I say stiffs, they were frozen stiff with their clothes on, and they just chucked them in the ground. The arms ain't everywhere. They're sort of chucked in the ground, right? And that's a really, really important point. Oh, can I? You know, I like getting obsessed about the Second World War. In the same place, right? Apparently, there's a notation by a German officer in the Second World War that when they were involved in Operation Barbarossa, right? The tanks couldn't work out where the roads were, right? So they would use dead soldiers as way markers along the roadways to indicate where the road was to the tanks, right? Because they were so stiff and solid, they were as good as using wooden posts. So they would use stiff soldiers who were frozen stiff as way markers along the roads as the tanks would roll into Russia in the latter stages of Operation Barbarossa, when everything was freezing in the ground. So I thought I'd add that little note as a little thing. Now I've actually I'll be doing something a podcast show in the future. We were exploring a podcast show with this with this well-known podcaster, and Laurie mentioned to me, he said you do all this stuff, and I say yeah, as well as the acting, and I say yeah. He said, what are you doing now? And I said, I'm doing the Roman period. And he said, can you, in your class, can you just get your students to look at this? And I thought, right, okay. What this is he had this little weird theory that that Roman engineers went to China, right? Which is plausible, because we've discussed that. So obviously the link around the Silk Route and all the rest of it is quite possible, right? But why did the hand industry up to about AD 200 use Roman engineers to influence the construction of the Great Wall of China? Because the Great Wall of China was already being constructed well before there would have been any real Roman contact with the Chinese world. He basically his sort of play was, you know, if the average Roman roads are up to 4 meters wide, and the road on the Great Wall of China is between 4 and 5 meters wide, is it plausible to say that Roman engineers assisted the construction of the Great Wall of China? I would say no. And the reason why I'm going to say no is quite simple, because the idea of roadways and communication along the Great Wall of China, right, carts and wagons. Obviously, when you're thinking about it, if it's going to be on average 5 meters width on the top, right, and wagons and carts are no more than about 1.8 meters wide, then you can have 2 sets. You know, one's going one way, one's going the next, and that would be plausible sense on the top of the Great Wall of China in parts. Maybe that's the same idea with the Roman road, that they don't need to be any more than 4 meters wide. Hence the comparison. And if you got carts wider than 2 meters, they become unstable, unless you got modern technology to mean that you've got wide carts. But you notice our cars ain't much wider than 2 meters, unless you got a beast like Goff that rides the road that's really wide and he sort of hogs the road. But usually the the thing is that we don't have wide vehicles because the wider they get, the more unstable they become. And it's the same with trains. So that sort of answers that question. And maybe what I could do is we'll look at this quickly, and I'll just mention this. This is the other thing that Laurie mentioned. He said, have you ever looked at this site at Burns Walk up in Scotland? And I said, I did, right? This is a site that we looked at a while ago. Just a reminder, it's a site in Scotland. There it is, Burns Walk, and there's Birmingham that we just mentioned, Rochester, High Rochester. And big difference from Rochester is High Rochester, Birmingham. There you go. And he basically said, are you going to mention this? And I said, well, we've already done it. So I thought I'd mention it again. This is a site that there was formerly an Iron Age hill fort there that the Romans took over and used as a practice site. And they built 2 forts, one on the north side, one on the south side. And they used it as a practice site in besieging the hill forts. And that's at Burns Walk. And we've already done that as a lecture ages and ages ago. I think we did it in the pandemic. I need a break. Otherwise, I'm going to have an enema, right? So let's have a break, and then there we go. Pat's fallen asleep. Not yet. Right, Richard. Anything you want to say, babe? Hey,
Richard's
he's asleep.
You sleeping?
Richard, anything you want to say?
Pam?
No. No, Richard don't want to say anything. All right, well, I can have a break in a minute, Richard. What about you, Goff?
No, a lot of information there, Carl. Got to think about it. Get it in my brain. No questions at the moment.
Good. As long as you pick something up. Right, Bill.
Yeah, the disease that you mentioned, which afflicted Napoleon's army, I think what you described, the common name of that is typhus.
Yes,
Paratyphoid,
typhus, yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference between typhoid and typhus, apparently. But there's a program on this many years ago, actually, about exactly what disease killed them. They came out after all the analysis of typhus. Yeah.
Paratyphus.
Nasty. Yeah, okay, thanks, Carl.
And basically, it's a disease that that you don't know you've got for a few weeks, and suddenly you get it, and it knocks you out.
Yeah.
It's a really nasty one. Pat, anything you want to say before we have our break?
Just a quick question. Where were those anaphors? The very beginning, you showed us pictures of Roman anaphors.
Amphoras, that they were actually found. The amphoras were actually found at the Roman site of Oplontis, right? So you got Stabae, you got Oplontis, you got Herculaneum, and you got Pompeii as the 4 main sites that were wiped out before Vesuvius in AD 79 on the 24th of August. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a large Roman villa they've excavated there, along with a few other things. Right. Anything you want to say, Henry, before a blood vessel goes?
Well, I'll just improve your blood vessel approach. Your Roman road, the covered one.
Yeah.
It's in Rome. It's actually, the building above it is the glass floor of McDonald's. Ghoulish individuals, you can sit there having your McDonald's burger and actually look through the floor down at the skeletons.
Oh my God, I love you! My God! Oh my God! Hey guys, we got to do that next week. What's it? So basically, all I got to do is look at the Roman McDonald's
skeletons in gutter.
Oh my God! Are you serious? You type that, you put that in, and you found it straight away.
Yeah.
Oh right.
And they've got the whole centre part of the floor of the McDonald's. It's a really big one. Is all glass, and people just sit there and actually look down on the road, and actually you can see the skeletons.
Oh my God, we got to do that next week. I'm sorry, you've
But I
opened
think
that one up.
McDonald's financed the restoration work through the I think the Rome archaeology system that was there to actually preserve it all, and actually the structures.
Do you know what? We should. I wish we had more of that in this country. We just don't. And the Italians don't seemingly don't have much money, do they? But they find it when they want to. Right, no answer to that one. Right, let's have a break. It's 8:22. I want us to be back by 8:35. Remember, boys, we've got to be finished by 9:15 on the dot. So, quick break.
Well,
Bill, so you talk about the cricket score.
don't talk cricket or rugby. Yeah. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Da, 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 da. La 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 la. Fill a glass and maybe sing around with me. La da 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 da. Oh. What's that for? Oh, it's on study, isn't it? Hmm. DDD.
Bill.
Hi.
Bill,
Yeah,
you know, you were saying you just done up your town hall.
yeah.
Where did you get the money from?
Oh, good question. It was 5 million, and it overrun a few million. I think local authorities, county authorities, grants. I think they had a big grant from, was it a lottery fund? Possibly, yeah.
All right.
So
What
worked it
government?
6 or 7 million altogether, you know.
Welsh government?
Oh, yeah, probably a grant from there as well. There's money available, so we're told, somewhere. So
Yeah.
you need to talk to your local MP, I suppose, or ME, MS, in particular. Who covers Barry? Who's your MS for Barry?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
it's what's her name? Oh,
Jane Hutt.
I said Jane Hutt. Yeah.
oh, okay, there we are. She's used to dealing with money, lots of it.
No, you're saying we met, well, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we put an extension and did up the village hall in Wick when I was living there, and we
Oh,
got
yeah,
money
yeah.
for the lottery,
yeah, yeah.
but no, we didn't get a lot from the local authority. Most of it was lottery money.
Yeah, probably then from Welsh government and a grant
Yeah,
from
we had a fair bit.
lottery, I guess. Yeah,
We had a lot from Europe as well.
yeah, yeah.
we did get it, but it wasn't as big a task as you did. You know, it was. Yeah.
So you're looking for more money, or
No, I'm just
it's
interested.
a general question on the camera? I don't know.
I've done all that sort of thing now, Bill. I've
Mm,
done enough.
yeah, but worth a visit. Come and visit sometime.
Yes, yes. Well, I know my stag.
It's impressive what they've done. It really is. You know, it's a
Yeah.
real
It's
community
lovely
hub
to see
now.
that, isn't it?
Yeah, right in the centre of the town.
It's
Real
good.
community hub. Yeah.
It revitalizes the place, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been a big success. And the entertainment, we get a lot of acts now, good acts, you know, live acts, live music.
Yeah, that's what we want. Yeah.
More cinema, yeah. It's all managed by Arwen Trust, ARWEN, Arwen Trust. It's a cultural group who run everything associated with the management and running of the town hall and library. Yeah.
That's great.
Arwen Trust. Yeah, it's very successful. Very pleased.
You don't hear about that on the news, do you?
No, it should be. Actually.
don't you?
Yeah, it should be. They could make a program of that on the actual project and how it evolved. Yeah, it could. Yeah, because next March, of course, be celebrating the 200th anniversary, the bicentenary of the town. So there's a lot of events planned for that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So things are happening slowly.
Yeah.
Not before time.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's jobs we need, factories and jobs. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And that's what Rachel Reeves is trying to get for us. Good luck to her.
Good luck to her. Give her yeah. There was a lot of negativity, and that's bad. Yeah. So there are good things happening.
Oh yeah, there are. There's so much bad news going on now, but yeah, you look underneath it all, and you can pick out some good things going on with people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's as if during bad times, it's sort of it impels people to get out and do something for the community, whatever it is, you know.
That's right. The problem, isn't it?
Yeah. You need people to motivate them. One motivator you need.
There's always one person that's the driving force, isn't it?
Always, yeah. And that's what you need. A driver.
A driver.
With commitment and energy.
I was thinking of proposing Carl for a knighthood. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Why not? Hey, if pop stars can get knighthood, why not Carl? Yeah, we'll go for that. We put a petition in, shouldn't we?
How about Lord Langford of Barry?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm there. I want it.
Hang on, he's heard. That'll swell his head.
Yeah, he soon picked that up, didn't he?
Yeah.
I'm there. Lord Langford of Looney Lane. I love it. Or even better. Hey, I'll tell you what, Goff, this will really upset a certain person in Lantwick Major, Jim. I could become Lord of Lantwick Major.
I want that job.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
No, you can have the Lord of St. Athan. Right, okay then.
Let's
the
go.
Burkerals. No, you go. Right, anyway, let's crack on. Let's get on with more images. The Barry Butts. Right. Boudica. Now, as I said, I wanted to do just a tiny little smidgen about Boudica tonight, but it's more than a tiny little smidgen. And Colchester destroyed. We're just gonna look at a little bit of an account and sort of give you some backbone, right? And about figures such as Catus Decanus, Petilius Caralis, and these figures. And obviously Boudica herself. So one of the things that we can sort of gesticulate about, and I think this is the point that me and Bill agree completely on, is that when you talk about a tribal grouping of people of about 150,000 people, tramps in from the territory of the Iceni through Colchester, through the territory of the Trinovantes over to London, who is going to feed these people, right? And when people write history, they always over exaggerate it without looking at any of the clear facts. So, we've got to try and see what those facts are. And the base story about this is, if you're going to look at the story of the Boudican rebellion, AD 60, AD 61, you've got to think about the fact that this involved a relatively limited area of Britain, right? What was going up in the north, what was going on in the north, what was going on in Cornwall, what was going on in Cymru, Wales, what was going on in the heart of the country, right? It was mainly about a group of people that were really annoyed with the Romans. So, a tiny little bit of a background. You're talking about the Iceni are really sophisticated people. We've done a whole class on this, sort of their coinage, having silver and gold coinage, and one of the representations of their coins are, in fact, we know that they are called the Iceni, ECE. Hence, we got Iceni, and we've got the horse, and we've got, for example, these are great pottery makers. So, these are quite advanced pottery makers, for example. And there you go. These are from the coins themselves. The horse, very much resplendent there. Enlarged drawings of Iceni coins with a horse and the abbreviated tribal name Iceni. And again, these people we see on coins. We see their name represented on coins, but the thousands of individual tribal people in Britain are not to be represented in a historical record, because the Romans just couldn't write them all down. I keep saying the Romans came to South Wales and Gloucester, and they come up with a name for all the people from Gloucester all the way through to the likes of Llanelli. They called them the Silures, but that's a name that the Romans gave these people. These people generally would not have had a single representative tribal name, because there were so many people. But with the Iceni, there are people that developed into a kingdom, right? A kingdom in the likes of Norfolk and Suffolk, right? So again, these areas themselves, we know that the Iceni are making their coins at Needham. We're looking at Thetford, very important archaeological site, that Saham, Tony, and also Westow. Me and wonderful Bill, and I think Pat went to Westow with us. Is that Anglo-Saxon village that was actually?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yes, we did. Oh, and Bill, can I let you into a little confession, Bill, between you and me?
What did you do?
Right. I organised the trip to Westow before I met Michelle, right? And I did it because there was this woman that I was very much keen on that ran the site at Westow, right? Called Anna, that I had contact with years before. She sent me a little gift that I wore for years, right? But strangely enough, the day that we went there, lucky for me and my relationship with Michelle, she was not in work, right? So, and guess what? She also had red hair and she was short. So I would have had a big problem there, Bill. So that's the real reason why we went to Westow.
Okay, I'll buy it.
It was the real reason.
All right.
But hey, that was a really nice site, wasn't it? With all the reconstructed Anglo-Saxon buildings. I remember the little chickens, the little hen with the little chicks there. I thought that was quite cute as well. But anyway, there was an Iron Age site there. That's the point. And it would have been a site that would have been really important to the Iceni. And also, this is a site that they minted their coins, because we know from coin molds that's where they made them as well. So this site itself is also very familiar. And this is a point that I'd like to make. Whenever you go into places, and I say this a lot now, whenever you go into somewhere like Londinium, London, where you go into Eberacum, York, any of these places, and you want to see Roman remains, do your research first, work out when everything's open, like we did when we visited Colchester on another trip, right? It's the only trip I've ever organised, Bill, where there's been people injecting heroin behind us whilst I'm giving a talk, right? Very interesting. And where... you saw that as well, didn't you, Bill?
I did. Yes, I did.
See,
They
I'm not
were
making
there.
this up, folks.
Yeah.
But anyway, our Colchester trip was really interesting, and the reason I planned the Colchester trip, you know, we visited as much of the Roman stuff as we possibly could, and we booked also with English Heritage to actually get them down into the basement of the Roman fabric of the temple, which was then later developed into a castle. And the other guy, I had one group wanting to go down here with the tour guide, and I was left with a small number looking at some of the other stuff in the museum. Well, I was with Roger and a couple of others, so that was good. But Bill went down, and the one thing that I remember about this, I might have some footage that the BBC doesn't have, because I've got some footage of Sir Mortimer Wheeler in the 1970s, right, with him in this basement discussing the name Boudicca and all the archaeological evidence that we've got for the Boudicca rebellion. Lovely locality. Now, this is one thing that's quite odd, right? That when you're thinking about the Colchester, and you're thinking about lots of people who pre-Roman times, what we've got people aspiring to be like the Romans, so they're burying stuff in places like this, which lots of Roman archaeology. And one thing about this is that this is a burial at the Stanway Cemetery, Colchester, and all these Roman artifacts in there. This might actually be roughly just after the Roman era kicks off in places like Colchester. We've got burials like this pre AD 43. And Bill, can I just mention something to you, Bill? That can you remember standing in that field by the temple complex in Colchester, and everybody started field walking?
And you found something, or Michelle found something. Interesting.
Michelle found a Roman coin, yes. Somebody also found a piece of really nice Roman Samian ware. And also, can you remember there was a clay object that was found that that I said may have been Roman? A white clay object.
I can't remember that, Carl, but you obviously
Yeah,
can.
it turned out to be a wig peg, a Roman wig peg.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I wrote a report on this, and I handed it to the museum. And as I'm sat there in the museum, the guy in the museum, he says, "Hang on a minute, this is from a schedule. All of this stuff is from a scheduled ancient monument." And I said, "Hang on a minute, right? It was ploughed, and my students were all over the field finding things, right? And I did file a report, Bill, and I got in a bit of trouble for it. But they found the funny side, right? Moral of the story is, whenever you go field walking with me, make sure it's not a scheduled ancient monument."
What if
But
it
we
is?
did find that coin. Yeah, I got in a bit of stick for that, but they found the funny side afterwards, so that was good.
What if it is? Make sure there's no one around if you pick up
Bill.
things.
Yeah, because I thought, hang on, there's no harm, and there was actually a public footpath there, and I said they strayed off the public footpath. And you know what? One of the officers in English Heritage said, they said, "Oh, what if one of your person found a coin in the field? Why didn't they just leave it there?"
Oh.
And I said, "Hang on a minute. They found a coin really enthusiastically in this field, which turned out to be a coin from roughly about AD 55, Bill. It was an early Roman coin from Colchester, right? And I said, if it's left in the field, right, somebody else is going to pick it up." Anyway, I thought I'd tell you that story. Anyway, we've gone right off the. No, we haven't gone off the point, because we're talking about archaeological evidence. This is evidence of a bag of burnt dates, right? Now, this is a bag of burnt dates, right? Now, this is a really interesting piece of archaeological evidence. So, what is a bag of burnt dates doing in Colchester? They've not been consumed, and this was in that thick black layer that we find underpinning the later Roman archaeology at Colchester. So, basically, what they say the following. Here we go. They say that the layer of burnt debris at Colchester created by the destruction of the town, is called the Boudiccan, destruction horizon. It ranges in depth from a few centimeters to a meter of burnt debris, which when they went to rebuild Colchester, they just built upon it. That's what they did. In places, the lower parts of the buildings are preserved to a height of over half a meter. The wooden buildings, not stone, because there would have been lots of wooden buildings at this stage, because they haven't built lots of stone buildings at this stage, allowing the architectural plan of the site to be reconstructed. Most of the Boudiccan destruction horizon is burnt daub. So what you're talking about wattle and daub structures. Amazing in a Roman town, but obviously it's not developed into a fully stone city yet. Normally, daub does not survive because it reverts to the clay from which it was made. But the high temperatures reached when the town was torched turned it into a more durable substance akin to pottery. Molten glass that had subsequently solidified also testifies to the ferocity of the inferno. Broken tiles, wall plaster, and smashed pottery are also common. So when we're thinking about this archaeological evidence, look at that, the gradillion for sort of cooking, cooking your food. So the Boudiccan destruction horizon is found really across the entire landscape of Colchester when they excavate, including outside the supposed boundaries of Colchester back from the period of AD 60, which we'll mention in a few moments. And basically what we talk about is that, but even in parts of the town destroyed by Boudica, the anticipated burnt layer can be missing, where the excavated area lay in gardens behind houses that fronted the street. So obviously, when there's areas where there's no buildings, there's some areas that survived being with this burnt layer because there weren't any buildings there. So what we're going to do, we're going to mention a little bit more detail. Look at this stone. This is a rather interesting artifact. This is a tombstone of a cavalry officer known as Longinus. Now, Longinus was not long buried at Colchester, right? When the rebellion occurred, and the point is that this was shattered at that time. This is found in the burnt destruction layer at Colchester, another piece of evidence of the rebellion happening. And when you think about it, this tombstone would have been standing for hundreds of years in a burial ground before it was destroyed, but it wasn't. It was buried and destroyed with fire damage almost years after the individual burnt. So that's another piece of archaeological evidence. Back to this head here. And maybe what we should do, right? We've already discussed this head, and I'm really wary of time, so I'm going to say. But basically, we've already seen this, and bit of wonderful archaeological evidence found in the river. Obviously, as they're moving from Colchester, Londinium, find the head of the ex emperor Claudius, and not every emperor, most emperors when they died became gods, right? Hence the temple of Claudius in Colchester. So again, this little bit of a map, and one of the things is this: was the rebellion counteracted by Suetonius Paulinus when he actually got to here, right? As he's coming back with the 20th Valley of Vitrix and the 14th Gemini from the likes of Holyhead, right? Now, there's no archaeological evidence for this battle surviving at all, right? And again, we'll look at that another week. And one of the big questions is, did it actually happen? That's the big question. Did this Battle of Watling Street actually happen? Because there's no archaeological evidence. You'd think that an army of 150,000 warriors completely massacred on a field of battle with just a few hundred Roman soldiers, there'd be evidence on a battlefield. And it might be that the battle never, ever took place because the rebellion probably fizzled out. Probably people thought, all right, we got to Verulamium, we got all this stuff, and we'll go home. That's how most rebellions sort of finished up, right? So when we will look at this image, we'll look at another image. I'll explain this image. It's quite a famous image of we're looking at a woman there, and all the family's been killed, and nobody really survived, right? Who were conspiring with the Romans. And one thing I'll say about this image is that she's just not going to be beheaded. we've got recorded accounts saying that her breasts were cut off and sewn across her mouth. And yeah, a terrible death, but that's another story for another day. Lots of people beheaded, nice image. And looking at this, let's talk about the story. Right, Colchester destroyed. So the first target of the Iceni and the Trinovanti sympathizers was Colchester. Now they could have destroyed Colchester with 5,000 people, right? The people in Colchester weren't armed. These people were. There were no gates. There were no defenses for Colchester. They could have just walked in. Their attack came in the late spring. So obviously, this was defined as the campaigning season already underway. So if people go to war, they anywhere across Europe, they would campaign from spring, summer, and usually campaigning would finish by September. Napoleon, you invaded Russia at the wrong time of the year, right? A certain German Führer did that when he operated Barbarossa in the Second World War. But there was something known as the campaigning season, and you don't campaign in the autumn and winter. You campaign in the spring, and then obviously you go home harvest time and you harvest your crops by about August to September. That time, job done. So this is why I'm saying, did the rebellion fizzle out? Was there a great battle of Watling Street? No evidence. Anyway, again, that's another day. So when the townsfolk got wind of the impending trouble, they appealed to Catus Decanus to reinforce the few troops still based here. Now, he was a procurator, basically a governor. He was able to spare only 200 inadequately armed men. This was Catus Decanus. So these headed towards Colchester, and it's likely that they never got to Colchester. They were wiped out on the way by another group of rebels. So there we go. What are they burning there? They're burning the temple of Claudius, right? There they are in the streets. And this is probably not the best image in the world. There she is. She's rallying her troops. And you can see it in this artist impression. They've already got lots of Roman armor. And basically, that person was probably a sympathizer. And the one on the back with black hair is probably a Roman. And this is completely wrong because this is a later reconstruction of Colchester. So preparations for the defence of the town were hindered by secret supporters of the rebel cause. No attempt was made to erect any defences, nor were women and the elderly evacuated. Tacitus, there's also the writings of Dio Cassius, but Tacitus wrote, says the town was not defended by a rampart and ditch. So this illustration is much later, except it's still showing the temple of Claudius, which would not have been standing when they rebuilt the city later on. There you go. Archaeology confirms this because the rampart of the former legionary fortress had been demolished and shoveled into a ditch under the command of another former governor in AD 59, known as Petilius Caralius. Petilius Caralius would become a governor, but he wasn't a governor at this stage. Sorry, he was a general in AD 55. Made that mistake. So courageous Petilius Caralius, the courageous but impetuous commander of the 9th Legion, marched south to the rescue of the town from his base in the East Midlands with a detachment of his legion coming all the way from Lincoln. But he was ambushed and his entire force of some 1,500 infantry were killed. The 9th Legion, a big chunk of the 9th Legion was wiped out. Petilius Caralius was so brave with his cavalry that he fled back to Lincoln. Excavations there, and then there's also another fort that he passed on the way, known as Long Fort in Peterborough. We know that this other fort that Petilius Caralius has actually went to, they found out in the excavations at Longthorpe that they hastily built a new fort because the fort there was too big and they had a small force at that stage. So they built a new fort where he awaited developments and did not go to the help of the people at Colchester. Catus Decanus, the governor, left Britain for France. Basically, the governor had left. a legionary commander had remained out of the field because the rest of his force had been wiped out. Meanwhile, at Colchester, I love this image. We'll explain this in a minute. Meanwhile, the destruction of Colchester was total. The whole city that we work out was destroyed by fire, and the population completely annihilated to a man and a child, a woman and a child. Nobody was enslaved. Everyone was wiped out, killed. The only hint, so the only hints that we get is the recorded debris and the thick black layer that spreads across the site. And by the way, we're not going to be able to complete the presentation tonight, but I'll do what I can. I love this image. And one thing I'm going to mention before we go on to this image is this. What I was mentioning last night, Marcullus's temple, not temple, theatre in Rome. I mentioned the one that was built for the nephew of Augustus. The one in Rome that we mentioned last week. That theatre there is a smaller version of the one in Rome. And this is how we get that reconstruction. Me and Bill in the dead of night visited that site, right? And the museum. We saw through and we saw little bits of the theatre. But obviously, this is a later reconstruction of Colchester, and the reconstruction is wrong because there's a temple there which was burnt to the ground and would never rise again. Look at this illustration. I love this illustration. And we've got 15 minutes left, but I'll mention this for a few moments. This illustration is so well put together. It sort of shows what we're seeing. Colchester at this stage was the location of a coloni, which were for retired Roman veterans. They would have had some swords. They would have had an idea, well, obviously a keen idea of fighting. Most of these people had fought in the Roman legion for 25, 30 years. They held out at the temple for 2 days, and the remaining children, women and children, were all burnt to death. And what happened to the bodies, we don't know, but obviously it was gutted. And that was it. And when you look at this illustration, it's really good because I'm thinking that we've got some nice cavalry shields. That's a cavalry shield in front. We've got Roman helmets. We've probably got gladiuses there. The Ala sword as well. And again, I really like this illustration. And obviously, the temple was not complete at that stage either. They were still building it. And look at that there. That is going to be the wheel mechanism for the crane. Did mention these, and we know what they look like from evidence found in Londinium. And again, probably a list of this is too over exaggerated, but again, you get the idea. So what we're talking about, we're talking about Caralius managed to get to Longthorpe, and then he headed up to Lincoln, the legionary base and Light Legion, Lincoln. Lindum, and you're looking at these localities. When you think about it, the history of this rebellion, right, is about this area, right, and you can see that at this stage, the country, the Roman province itself, had probably had expanded to something like this, right. So the rebellion did not absorb the whole country, and actually, Suetonius Paulinus was on Anglesey at the time. He'd become a governor of Britain, but Suetonius Paulinus was on Anglesey with the 10th Valia Victrix, which was based at Diva Chester, and the Gemini Legion, which would eventually be based at York, which is the 14th. But what happened? What about this Roman Legion? Yeah. We'll talk about that another time. The Second Augusta Legion remained in Exeter, at Isca in Exeter, and did not go to Colchester and London. They stayed. They knew what was going on, but they refused to take orders and tackle the rebellion. The legator killed himself because he was deemed a coward. Now, when I said to them last night, this is a little nugget, right? We've done more or less done the Boudicca bit tonight. We've got some other little bits left, and we'll go right up to 1:15. And I know Richard has got to leave us at 10 past. Anyone who can work out which museum this is in Britain. This is a postcard. I will send it to them. I'll write a little bit of blurb on it. I need to know where this is, which museum this is to be found in Britain. And the first one to shout that out next week, right, will get this as a postcard sent through the post. So I'm really not sure I'm going to give justice to this, but as I'm going through my bits and pieces, so I'll do this bit quick actually. So luckily enough, I was in Barry Boys Comprehensive School. This is my first history book in the comprehensive school, Form 1L, right, with Malcolm Phillips. And I wanted to put this in here quickly. I did this in a lot more detail last night because we said, what is history? And I've been a little bit critical of my history teachers from Barry Boys, usually along the lines that, you know, when I asked the question, what happened in Britain between AD 110 and 1066, whatever history teacher turned around and said, nobody lived in Britain. That's why we don't talk about it. Anyway, so that came from a history teacher in Barry Boys. However, what we were taught at Barry Boys, lots of the history on the Romans was pretty good because it grounded me for lots of stuff that we're doing now, years and years later. This is one thing that I really didn't like. You know, when I say to people, I don't use the first, the seconds, the 14th and the 15th century in my presentation, simply because when you're talking, and I'm putting lots into it, and I'm saying the 9th century, people are thinking, I know what people are thinking. Is it the 900s or the 800s? What's he talking about? And then I've gone on to something else. So I basically prefer to say the 400s, the 500s, and the 600s. That's why I did it. But it's still a system that people still use today, which I don't like, the 13th, the 14th and stuff. But we did that in school. So again, the Romans, we used to do fold out things. And one interesting thing, the way I'm doing my classes now is quite interesting because it's exactly the way it was taught in school. When we did the Romans in school, we spent time talking about the Carthaginians and Hannibal and the foundation of Rome and all these other things. Exactly what I'm doing, right? And I didn't know this. I didn't know this is the way history was taught when I was in school, right? But it was. So I'm happy that I'm doing something that my history teacher taught me years ago. And there we go. This sort of thing. What were two of the Caesar's reasons for invading Britain? So we discussed this, sort of come up with an idea, you know, this is a precise question and make the empire bigger. And the Britons were helping the Gauls, you know, Vercingetorix grounded me quite well. And again, lots of different things. My spelling's atrocious. Nothing's changed. That's the history book, right? And basically, I had my acting agent put this together for us today. And I mentioned last week, if anyone wants this printed out, if anyone actually wants me to put this on a t-shirt and stuff, then let me know, because this is unique to us guys, right? I love this image, and this really for me paints the scene. And what I'm going to do when I send out the notes of these classes, which I send out every single week, which I email you guys with the class recording, I'll put this as an attachment on there because it really shows how this would have been a bit of a mix. You know, is that person there actually Boudica? You know, is it that maybe that's probably more what Boudica would have actually looked like, with the warriors around with leggings and all the rest of it. And I thought that was great. So if anyone wants that, send me a text then, but I'll send this as an attachment anyway. So I just wanted to share this with you, and I know Richard is going in a minute, so thank you for joining us, Richard. Hopefully see you next week. So I just wanted to mention this, that obviously I'll do this quick. So 1990 I wrote to Pompeii and they sent me this map. This is back in 1990, and you're thinking, well, still all of these grey areas here were still to be excavated in Pompeii back in 1990. Now, how many years have we gone on? It's like 35 years later, they've excavated a lot more of Pompeii, right? But there's still a third of Pompeii that hasn't been excavated. From one that's actually been to Pompeii, Henry, you know the areas that haven't been excavated, what do they look like?
They're basically just grassed over areas with some structures in, but not anything significant.
Yeah. And my thoughts are that if they continue doing the work that they're doing, obviously excavating and putting shelters over them and stuff, that's probably the way to go. Because when you look at Pompeii from this image, this is from this leaflet I was sent. I love this leaflet, this sort of aerial view thing. When you look at it back in the 1990s, it's overgrown. And I was actually shocked when I saw this. I thought, oh my God, this is a great Roman city and it's like overgrown and it's like that. And
I would say that is still today to
yeah,
an extent.
I feel sorry, you talk a minute.
No, I was going to say to an extent, unless you're on the main tourist areas, but if you wander off the side areas, you suddenly realise actually not a lot is actually going on to preserve it at all.
I feel very sad when you say that, because I was very sad when I saw this, and again when you're
is different, I think.
Say that again.
Herculaneum is different, but it's a much more compact site.
Yeah. I think when I saw this back in 1990, I would be hoping now, 35 years later, that you'd be telling me that it doesn't look like that, but you're still saying it looks like that, and I'm very sad when you tell me that. But when, again, back to what I said, I've got this as a leaflet, as a photograph on a leaflet, and I'm thinking this looked brilliant as an image, but you don't get this type of stuff on the internet. You don't. I've not seen an image like this. I know you're going to send me, Henry, you're going to send me something similar to this. I'm sure you can find something, but you've got to. But Henry, you've got to really scout for this type of thing on the internet, and this is on a leaflet, and it's like really great. I love it. It sort of paints that picture, but again, still sad about the trees and stuff. Now, again, I've been going through albums and stuff, and as I'm chucking stuff on the fire, I'm collecting all my unused postcards, and I thought, right, lots of this is like Roman stuff, and I thought, well, whatever. Some of these will be sent to you guys when I'm asking for renewal stuff, or I need to put a message through to you, or thank you for something. So, but lots of these things are really great images, and I found this one. I found this. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. And again, back to what I just said, you control through the internet, but it's sometimes difficult to find these types of images. This is from the Villa of Mysteries. This is great, isn't it? It's like, again, it just, I look at this and the detail, and you can see that is that 3D or is that in relief? But you can actually see that there is relief stuff going on in the background where it's sort of the images are raised and they're coming out at you. And the big thing is if this stuff didn't survive at Pompeii, would later generations have just painted over this and have been a different scene? Yes, they would have. So we've got a classified moment within AD 79 of a moment in time, a picturesque moment in time, and that's exactly what we're looking at here. And I always remember the dog, and I think this is now in the Naples Museum. I think that this would have been in a glass cabinet at Pompeii, and I could stand corrected, those that have been here. But I like this, and this has actually still got the collar in. So what they're doing with these, they're actually scanning them now, and they're working out that there's iron and leather and all sorts of things with this. And you can imagine that I exactly know what this dog is doing. This is what my cats do when they're trying to nuzzle into things. You can imagine that there's all this sort of pumice in and he's trying to nestle into the pumice to try and get away from all the smoke and stuff, and he just asphyxiates himself. And this one, again, this is one of you guys. You've had enough of my presentation tonight, and you're lying on the ground suffocating, asphyxiating with all the gases and stuff. And again, what they've done with lots of these, they've put them in a room, which is just like they're single figures in like this room, and they're suspended, and you can look at them. And that's what they've done at the Naples Museum with lots of these figures, but there's hundreds of them. But there's not as many figures as there should be. And this is one of the things that people start asking. Did as many people die at Pompeii as people say? You know, in the thousands, was there more like hundreds? This is Etna, but this doesn't look very different from what the people were looking at, Etna in Sicily, what people were looking at on that fateful day on the 24th of August in AD 79. And one of the other things, we've seen this statue before, and we've nearly finished actually, so if I go a minute or so over, please forgive me. So this is the a wonderful statue associated with the central complex, with the temple, that we actually saw that sort of that sundial last week. But most of the statues were taken away in 1740s, 1750s by the kings and queens of Naples. They melted them down, so we don't have as many of these as we could have, but they were all there at that time. Again, looking out over Pompeii, getting a feeling, getting a sense, getting a depth. There's the very calm Vesuvius there, but she might erupt again in the future. As a pirate letter. On that moment, it's 9:15. Wow, we've managed to make it to 9:15, and that's the end of the presentation. So there we go. And they could do so much more with that, couldn't they? But that's life. And again, what I've thought, maybe they should do more living history at Pompeii, but that's me. Right. So, oh, and years ago, I haven't found the diary, but I will one day. It says in my diary, I've got a list of life goals in my life from about the age of 10 or 11. It says, buy Pompeii and restore it. There you go. There you go. Well, being that it costs £6 million to restore a town hall with a roof still on it in Maesteg, how much would it cost to try and protect Pompeii? Talking about a lot of money, so we need to get a Chinese developer in, and Bill can be the engineer to get it done. So right, okay, that's it tonight. That's it. So we'll do a lady first. Pat?
Nothing for me. Thank you very much. Yes, appreciate it.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And vegan, Henry.
I did send you something.
But that's for next week, obviously. So we'll keep that for next
it
week.
might be for this week.
Oh, you sent it via an email, did you?
WhatsApp.
Oh, let's look at my WhatsApp. Oh, I've got a message. Oh, I got that. Oh, that is that the image of the road and the tarmac?
No, it's the child and in Pompeii, the child and the adult.
Ah, right. Do you know what? Right, I will keep that for next week. It's not come up on my WhatsApp yet, but I'm sure it will.
Otherwise, no, you're safe.
Okay, we'll do that next week. If you haven't sent it, resend it, because it's not come up on my WhatsApp yet. So, right, Bill.
It's just so interesting exploring Pompeii in particular with those images, and of course it brings it more home to me and Henry because we've been there. And you as well, Carl?
I would like to say I have, but I haven't.
Oh,
I've never
right,
been there.
we got one up on you. Yeah, it's amazing. When I was there, we went in the morning with the tourists, and it was busy. But we went later in the evening before it closed, and then you can really sense the atmosphere there, and the ghosts, and you get a good feel for how they lived, especially those wall paintings. I find in the restored villas, it tells you so much of daily life there, doesn't it? And obviously those were of the rich people. You don't see much of what the poorer people were treated and what they got up to. But obviously, being a slave society, there's a lot of bad things went on there as well, which is not good. But that was life then, wasn't it? You were lucky to be in the hierarchy, and you weren't if you're a slave. But yeah, all good stuff. Yeah, there's something about the Romans, isn't there? There's something about it which is fascinating. the Romans. I always find that. Yeah.
And don't forget that one lecture I gave, where Roman women, which is completely starkly different from what you've just said, because you were mainly referring to men, really, about the status and so on. If you were a poorer woman, you had a better life than a rich woman, because a rich woman in Roman society was to be covered up, controlled. But poorer women had a better life than the richer women, but they didn't have a better standard of life. So that's
More
something
freedom,
else.
more freedom in a way, I suppose, even though they might have been slaves. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Carl. That was good stuff. All good stuff.
Right. Talking about Goth's woman of his dreams, a Roman slave woman, Goth.
Information there. Really good. Thanks very much. But no questions.
That is absolutely great, guys. And to be honest with you, thank you for that. To be honest with you, that really sort of worked tonight, and I managed to get to that sort of 9:15. So it is an advantage on Tuesday when I'm doing this, so I can actually time it. So that's really good. So I'm gonna mention that. Oh yeah, one thing I haven't mentioned is that we've got 3 more classes until the Christmas break, and then we will have 2 weeks off, and then we'll be back just early part of January. But we've obviously got 3 weeks to go yet. So,
okay.
and I've got another 6 Santa performances to do. And I will tell you all about one of the Santa performances next week, but we've run out of time tonight. So I'm going to say thank you very much for all of you, including Richard and anybody else online. So good night, Goff, Bill,
Good
Good
night.
night.
and Henry.
Thank
Night,
you.
folks.
All stay
Thanks for your
safe.
night. Bye then. Good night.
My pleasure. Night.
Have a good
Have a
week.
good one. Night. Have a good week. Yeah, and you.
Okay, bye.
Don't forget to keep sending the pictures. Night, Pat.
I'm just trying to send more. I'm trying to find them on my phone.
Okay, fair enough. Well, make sure you do. Oh yeah, it's coming through. I got it. Yeah, you described that quite well. Yeah, I got it. I got the baby and the what's
adult.
going on there?
Yeah. That's in the museum in Pompeii.
Yeah, but what is going on?
I'll leave that to you to analyze and
Yeah, I will. All right.
well, there's a couple more actually. Oh,
Oh, lush. Oh well, we'll certainly use them next week. Brilliant. All right then. Oh, brilliant! I got him and the horse. Oh wow, the horse.
but when I
No,
was
it's not a
there,
horse. It's a donkey, isn't it? So
yeah, when I was there in the 1980s, these were all actually in the open air, just left around. They weren't in glass cabinets or anything. They were just left actually on the side of the street you walked up.
Yeah, sad really. And you've got the one of the child there as well. That's really nice. All right then. Well, I will I will add these in next week if I will, and really great photos. Brilliant. Excellent.
Actually, I've got something else.
And you don't get these on the internet, do you? So
No, I've got something else. Hold on.
a picture of Anna Karenina. Ooh.
Oh, there's so much stuff here.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Oh, that one will confuse you.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. It's all right.
I thought you just buggered off. Right, okay, then I'll. Yeah, it's not come through yet, but I'm sure it will soon.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the Pompeii ones. I'm trying to find the year. I'm battling with Cyprus at the moment. Here we go. That one will confuse you.
Just makes you wonder why somebody just didn't jump on the back of that donkey and ride out.
Very true. I was trying to find you that I thought was quite.
You've been to
Right,
Pompeii more than once.
yeah, my brother and I went back in the 1980s. We caught the train, and we just tagged on the back of a tour and just followed them around for about 4 hours. They thought we were part of the tour, and then they all went off after paying their money for the tour, and we just went the other way and caught the train back.
I would say that's the type of thing I'll do.
But it is hard going. I mean, if it's very hot, you've got to be very careful. Because there's not a lot of shade and it gets extremely hot. There's no water around or anything, so you've got to bring your own water with you.
I can. This is what I mean. They could do so much more with it. They really could.
So I just sent you a few. I just sent you a load more. So I don't know if they've come through or not.
No, they'll take a while. It's just that when you said that about McDonald's, right? It was just like, yeah, I've got you've got the Vasa. That is the Vasa, isn't it?
That is the Vaso. That is incredible.
And you got more cart ruts here. It's almost as if this is, yeah. Can you see what I mean? It's just so uneven.
I think that's because all they do is take the stone from the local area and just place it and just mix and match.
Yeah.
And don't have to like carve it or anything. It's just easier to take it and put the different types of stones together.
And the other thing as well is it doesn't necessarily mean to say it was level either.
No, because basically the carts are going on a track anyway,
Yeah.
and the people are walking across on various stone pillars across the tracks.
Do you think if we went back in time and wandered around Pompeii for a day, we'd probably be seriously ill by the end of it?
Probably not, because there's a lot of water drinking areas. There's an awful lot of fountain areas.
Yeah, but
basically
with the
people
water,
kept out of the muck.
yeah. But would the water be any good?
It would be coming through springs that were from the volcano, so it would actually be probably quite filtered water.
Oh yeah, it'd be continuous, wouldn't it? It's not going to be from a stagnant water source, so no.
And also it's going to be going through all the pumice that and so it's going to be filtered out.
Yeah.
So I think it would probably be quite clear drinking water, as long as their systems are up to it, which I'd imagine they would have been.
At that stage, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh, do you know what, right? One of the bloody cats brought a mouse in here, right? So they've been wandering around chasing this bloody mouse for the past 2 hours.
You want to get a dog to sort them out, the cats out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember when we had the problem with one of the neighbours and we had to call out the police, and it was like the police said they were fine, and then the next minute it was like, "Why haven't you got a dog?" And I just said, "Why? Okay, but you should have a dog. Why haven't you got a dog? It's irresponsible in a place like this not to have a dog." And the police are saying this. It's like, "Oh yeah, I'll try and get a dog then." But this is west. This is the frontier territory, so it's somewhere else.
No, you need to go to the west of Ireland. That's That's really the Wild West.
Yeah, I don't think I look. I wouldn't last 5 minutes out there, so I'm not going there.
You would, no, you wouldn't. You'd have to deal with all the poutine makers. Right.
All right then. We won't go there. All right then. I will. I will. I'll see you next week.
Right.
Anyway,
Oh,
thanks for those images. I'll add them in. If you got anything else, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
One thing, so you know, I'm not here for all of January because I'm going to a particular island.
Yeah, and as if I don't know which island that is.
No, it would be a different one, but it's
Oh
a
yeah, because
very, it's a very historic one.
he's not based there anymore, is he? So
No, he's going to be somewhere else.
yeah, I can work out which one that is. So don't say any more.
But
Yeah,
your
I'll
Crusaders
message
might
it
have
to
been
you.
there.
What's that?
Your Crusaders might have been there.
Oh, well, why didn't you just tell the world? I didn't even know we had a base there.
No, he's not going there. He's going to a different base,
Oh, right, fair enough.
far, far away.
Is he gonna continue doing service for a while then?
Yes,
Yeah, good.
because he said someone needs to defend the country because the rest of you are doing nothing.
Hang on a minute, somebody needs to defend that island, not this country. Oh God. All right then.
Right, adios.
Adios, amigo. I will see you next week.
Okay,
Thanks for the images. I'll see you then. Take care.
bye.
Night. Right, that's it, folks. I don't know who's online still, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I've got to be out of here. It's oh shit, I should have left by now. Right, okay. I gotta go. I gotta feed the cats. Even though who's ever listening, you've heard that there's a mouse in here, so they got some food. I gotta go because I want a coffee. I gotta get to the McDonald's. Yeah, I've run out of milk. Great. So I'll have a coffee on the way back now. Sort of. So I'm back here in the morning by about 12. Got some stuff. Anyway, I will see you soon. Diolch yn fawr i chi, gwelwch chi eto. See you next Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:10 till late. Diolch yn fawr i chi, gwelwch chi eto. Nos da. Nothing in the chat box 1, nothing in the chat box 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing in the chat box 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, nothing in the chat box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Nos da chi.